So here are some resource photos I took for my painting of the Orcas Island ferry landing. And there's a number of different views. I'm going to create a composition based on some kind of synthesis of all of this. Here's some detail of the Madrona. There's a cruiser I may include going across the bay. I have a bunch of pictures of the ferry itself coming in at various angles, and I'm not sure, I don't think I'll be using this one. I'm going to probably have the ferry close in, and I'm not totally sure the landscape versus portrait view, but we'll see. We'll work it out here. Well, I'm getting ready to do this Orcas Island landing, and already got the paper set up, and I've got the sky is all wet, and I've got some color in the palette. I'm using cobalt and Prussian and a little bit of cerulean blue here, very light mix, very dilute, and beginning at the top, very lightly touching in some color. And in this sky, I tend to leave a little bit of white to indicate clouds, and they're going to be super soft. So I'm not actually going to be shading the clouds and giving them definition. And they're just going to be light areas in the sky, but it's pretty effective. I have put some masking fluid around the edges of my tree because I didn't want the water to get in there. I didn't want the blue to seep in because once the blue's there, then you try to go over it and make leaves with green. It's going to complicate things and you won't get the color you're looking for. So as I work my way down here, I'm going to get lighter and lighter toward the horizon. And as I go, I kind of have to be vigilant to make sure that I'm not getting any tide pools or any hard edges, and try to keep my hand out of it, really. Let the paint go where it will, let the capillary effect take place, and I do a little bit of mopping up here and there, but for the most part, just touching it in and letting the color go where it will. And it seems to work pretty well. Now I need some areas that are a little, have a little bit more pigment to them, probably up near the top. And then I'm probably going to lighten up a couple of spots to make them appear to be clouds and streaks across the sky. And it helps to give depth. And all of this takes place over the course of probably, for the painting in the sky, maybe a half an hour. And I don't want to rush it. And the more you brush, probably the more you lose the spontaneity, the idea. And here what I'm doing is actually wiping off the brush, and then I'm just picking up a tiny bit of pigment. Ultralight touch with the brush, very soft bristle brush, and you can see there I'm pulling a couple of streaks across. And it leaves a nice soft white cloud form, and I want that to go right off of the picture plane. So this part of the process is really just kind of keeping an eye on things as everything settles in. if I see a light area that I like, I might accentuate it a little bit. So I see a cloud here, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of color just to lighten it a bit. I'll leave the underside of the cloud, I'll probably leave alone for the most part, but highlight a little bit on the top. We're going to keep in mind the light source. Where's the sun? And there I'm pulling quite a bit of pigment up off the paper. Now these brush strokes, you can probably tell I'm not really even bending the bristles on an ultra soft brush. That's how light the touch is. It's just barely making contact with the paper. I'm going back into this. I want a little deeper, a little more color and a little more depth of the sky right there. Now, this is one of those things in painting where you have to know when to quit. You can really overdo it, and you don't want to end up brushing back and forth. All I'm doing there is getting rid of a little bit of excess moisture. Now, since we're getting down toward the horizon, I want to pick up a little bit of color, and this is the overall appearance, and it's going to work well for what I have in mind. The emphasis in this painting is going to be on the, of course, there's a ferry involved because this is a ferry boat landing, and the big tree on the left side is a madrona that's really beautiful, and then there's a couple of buildings on the next to the ferry boat ramp, and so we're kind of an elevated perspective here. We're kind of up on a hill, and we're going to be looking down at the ferry coming in, and across the water you'll be able to see Shaw Island, actually, way off in the distance. I did a painting of Shaw Island landing way back. So this is a little different because on the Shaw Island painting, we're actually on the back of the ferry looking at the landing as they're leaving. And then this one is watching the ferry approach. Well, I've got the palette all set up, and just touching in some distant leaves at the top of this tree. So I'm using a pretty small brush. I think it's only a 2, and keeping the mixture pretty light. I've got a little bit of sap green, some olive, hooker's green. I'm touching it with brown occasionally, but keep changing my mixture slightly. Every now and then I'll get a little ochre mixed in with it, and it's pretty wet, but the paper is fairly dry up here because I don't want it all puddling up and flowing together. I want this to be fairly distinct. Because these leaves are up against the sky, and I want to have a nice crisp little silhouette there. So this portion is fairly controlled. The paper is not real damp, and of course the drier your paper, the more control you're going to have. All of the kind of gray-green, light-colored, pigment painting that you see in the tree there thus far is from masking fluid. And those are actually going to be areas where you can see through the tree to the sky behind. And the only way for me to preserve that was with the masking fluid. So you paint that on and try to keep it organic and kind of shapes like you would find within the tree. And those will protect that part of the paper, because there would be no way I could do a wash of green over the top of this and then come back and try to represent a sky color, particularly the very light pale sky that I've got. So if I didn't protect it, there would be no way to get that, to achieve that color. So this is my approach. And painting the masking fluid takes a little while, but it is painting. And I use a fairly small brush for it, a synthetic, cheapo, but I just keep wiping it off and creating a tip that I can work with. And since it's, nature, it's very irregular, it's going to be kind of random shapes. But you do want to kind of feel as though you're painting tree forms, and with branches in the background and a lot of clusters of leaves. And this is a madrona tree, and it has kind of a particular look. It's sort of similar to rhododendron, and I'm no expert on. There's so many different types, but the clusters of leaves kind of remind me of rhododendrons on a madrona, but madronas also have a lot of kind of a reddish brown trunk, but also kind of colored leaves that are brownish, that aren't getting whatever nourishment they require, but they're very common to occur on the tree. And doesn't mean the trees are not healthy, but it's just there's a lot of brown leaves as well as some really kind of bright green ones. So the color here that's probably dominant is a sap green, and then I usually adjust some of it with adding a little bit of olive green or a touch of hookers, or even in the shadow I would maybe add a Payne's gray to the green. But predominantly sap green is the leader in the pack here. And so actually I found that touching it in this way was a bit slow and tedious and maybe unnecessary. I kind of evolved into another technique after spending way too much time just trying to touch in leaves one by one. I mean, it's a nice effect, but it's unnecessary, and it didn't feel like painting either. It just felt like, I'm not sure what, but it didn't feel like painting. So I do, in time here, change my technique. I am trying to, create a kind of a crisp edge here against the sky, and keeping it small because of the distance involved. Everything's going to appear smaller the further away it is. So this is up toward the top of the tree. That's going to be pretty far away, and you wouldn't have super sharp focus on it, and there wouldn't be a lot of depth to the color. It would be lighter value than as you move down the tree and gets closer to you. So all of those things in mind, I just work my way around the perimeter. Now I've got some like protective paper over the sky, because as you do this kind of work, you can easily flick little bits of color off your brush and get it up and actually ruin something that you worked hard on or you want to protect. And that's always really frustrating if that happens, because there's no way to get it back. I mean, you can try, but it'll always be a little spot, and it bugs me to have to deal with that. So I cover my stuff up, and then I don't have to worry about it. Plus, I've got the palette sitting on there, which I wouldn't do if it wasn't covered. So I recommend that, just something. Put something down there so that if you've completed an area and you're happy with it, don't let it get speckled. So here I've done a little bit of a wash over a good portion of the top of this tree, kind of working my way down. And I typically do work kind of from the upper left to the bottom right, just because I stick my arm in it otherwise. And just to test my technique, I'm putting out some darks that are going to be next to the light of the sky, because the light creates a stronger effect by putting the dark against the light as you're looking through the tree. Gives the tree more depth, and when that masking fluid is removed and I paint the sky color, it'll give the tree much more depth 3D appearance, having those darks against the light. And so sometimes you have to kind of think in reverse when you're using this masking fluid, because you need to keep in mind that that area is going to be removed, and what's it going to reveal? Well, it's just going to have white paper there. So in addition to putting the sky color in there, I'm going to also be adding a few leaves and some limbs and some sticks and twigs and stuff that you're going to see in those places also. But it's going to be predominantly the windows to the sky, looking through the tree, because these trees are pretty dense, but not completely like a huge evergreen that you can't see through. You can kind of see through these in places. And I like that because it kind of reveals things going on behind. Lower in the painting, there will be possibly a boat that you can see through the tree, and certainly part of the landing and the ferry dock. So I'm just touching it in, and the paper's damp, but it's not like it's not flooded with water. I'm trying to, as I do this, consider the leaf shapes and how how they appear from a distance, and they kind of look like, actually, if you squint your eyes at them, kind of look like a little starfish of green colors. And you have to be aware that you don't repeat the exact same thing over and over, because it'll create a pattern and it will not look natural. So you want to keep changing up the mixture with your brush, and also change the direction of your brush strokes. So as much variety as you can do, or to keep it organic and looking natural. If you just do the same shapes, the same sizes, etc., as I said, it'll create a pattern, and it'll be something that will kind of put you off. So in addition to all of this, there will be some trunks of the madrona that are colored in with primarily a burnt sienna for the wood, for the trunk of the color of the wood. A burnt sienna with some raw sienna, and maybe a little yellow ochre here and there for the color of the madrona trunk and its limbs. Of course, the limbs are going to be deep in the tree, and most of those are going to be really dark and small, because the leaves cover most everything. But that is my approach on this. As I work down, things will get slightly larger in terms of the clusters of leaves and size of the trunk, and every detail will kind of be amplified as you move closer to the observer. So I'll be doing that, and I'm going to speed this up a little bit. And it shouldn't be hard to see the technique here. And hope you enjoyed that one. I'm going to put in some music, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.